Hey there and welcome. If your tabletop miniature is desperately looking for cover but there is nothing around, don't worry, I got you covered. Pun intended. Jokes aside, in this video I'm gonna show you how you can easily build your own scatter terrain rocks in practically no time. Alright, let's go. Material-wise, I was using pieces of cardboard, which is the main material for the rocks. Sheets of cork, but that's optional, because you can use cardboard instead, a hobby knife and some super glue. You can also use scissors instead of the knife, but I found it easier to cut everything with the hobby knife. Later in the video I also used some paper tissues and PVA or wood glue. I used 50 and 40mm tabletop bases as templates for the base layers of the rocks. I could also eyeball the size, but since I had them laying around, why not make use of them? I started with the big rock arch, and for the first layer I used cork and the 50mm base to get the right size. But like I already said, you could also use cardboard for that. I used cork because it seems to be a little bit more stable as a base layer, so the arch doesn't get knocked over so easily after it's finished. After cutting the pieces out, I shaped the edges with my fingernails to make it look more natural. To get the right height, I took one of my Warhammer miniatures to measure its height, including the attached equipment, like this big halberd. I wanted to fit at least similar sized miniatures under the arch to make it more passable, so I aimed for a height of about 8 cm or 3 inches. Then I took the cardboard, the pieces I'm using here are about 6mm thick, and started to cut out tons of round shapes. The size of those don't really matter as long as they are smaller than the base layer shapes that I cut out before. If you are using a hobby knife like I do, please be careful because you can easily slip off the cardboard and cut yourself. After I had enough pieces, I took some super glue and started to stack them on top of each other to form them like staircases. So for every piece, leave an overhang of a few millimeters. When I was done with that, I was sitting there with 2 staircases of cardboard. But one big piece on top was still missing. To get the right size of the missing piece, I first determined the right distance between the 2 rocks, which was about 15 cm or 6 inches. I took the cardboard again and cut out a longer shape to bridge the distance between the 2 rocks. For the smaller rocks I did pretty much the same as before, but this time with the 40mm miniature base as template. But you can decide for yourself how big the rocks should be. You can build a huge rock or even tiny ones, it's totally up to you. I again cut out round cardboard shapes, even smaller ones as for the arch before, and glued them on top of each other as well, but without the overhang this time. I think that you will agree that the rocks do look a little bit fake, so we gotta give them some texture. I used the paper tissues, wood glue and some water. First I took a small container and mixed the glue with water. I cannot tell you the exact glue to water ratio, but a 1:1 ratio is a good start. Maybe a little less water even. The mix should be a bit thicker than milk. I would highly recommend to use rubber gloves because the following step is a bit messy. So I took a paper tissue and separated the layers. 1 layer is enough. Then I took an old brush and applied some glue on the cardboard rocks, followed by the paper tissue. Then I covered the whole paper with my glue mix so it would get completely soaked. This creates a nice texture for the whole build and also makes it a little bit more sturdy. It is easier to apply the paper tissues when you rip them into smaller pieces first. I did that until every rock was completely covered with paper and glue. The most time-consuming part came right after, because it takes a few hours for the glue to dry, and here I have to be honest, even though this video series is called One Day Build, I did not finish that project in one day, because I started later in the evening, and when everything had dried, it was already too late for me to finish. But if you're starting earlier in the day, you can absolutely finish the project in one day. The next morning, after every piece was dry, I started painting. I wanted to give my rocks a desert look, so I started with a dark brown as a base coat. The cool thing is that you don't have to prime anything, because acrylic paints perfectly stick to the hardened paper glue mix. After everything was covered with a dark brown, I moved on to the sandy desert colors. From here on, I applied everything by dry brushing. First, I used a very bright sand color, which was almost white, because that makes the actual sand color that I applied right after that stand out even more. Then I took Light Earth by AK Interactive and did the actual sand shade. Similar colors by Citadel would be Sandry Dust or Karak Stone. So I dry brushed every rock with that color. And for the final touch, I used a very bright sand color again to very carefully apply some highlights here and there. That was pretty much it. If you have some small bushes or tufts laying around, you could also use those for more details, but that's completely optional. And now you can build your own scalar terrain rocks, and maybe those rocks will save the life of one of your favorite models one day. Have fun building. And as always, if you wanna see more stuff like this, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below and subscribe. Alright, thank you for watching. Have a good one. Cheers.